So Harman, the company that makes the Ilford black and white film stocks, had recently started making colored film stocks, and the first one that they came out with was the Phoneix 200 for 35mm film. The fact that there's new film stock being developed is really super exciting, and so the next thing they did was to make a 120 version of this Phoneix 200. And that's why we're here today. So to be honest with you, when I did try out that 35mm film stock, the Phoneix 200, I wasn't the most in love with it. To me, it was a little bit too contrasty, a little too saturated, and just kind of unpredictable. I shot it though in pretty cloudy circumstances, so I wasn't sure that maybe I just wasn't shooting it in the right light, but I didn't love it that much, and so I wasn't the most excited when the 120 came out. But I did go and watch a few YouTubers as they reviewed and tested out the 120 version, and I was actually surprised at how decent it looked. And I was like, okay, I could actually, use that film stock. Like, that's not bad at all. So of course I went and bought one and I tried it out for myself. When I shot the 35mm version, I didn't shoot it at box speed. I shot it at 160, which is what the film lab told me to shoot it at. And this time around, based on what the other YouTubers said, I shot it at 100 speed. And so with that information, I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to change the lighting conditions. I'm going to shoot it at 100. And maybe this time it's going to turn out a lot better than it had turned out for me when I used the 35mm version. So let's take a look at the photos. So what did you think of the photos? The photos that I just showed were actually not straight out of camera. I had to do quite a bit of tweaking to get them to look that way. So similar to my experience with 35mm, I still felt like they were a little bit too contrasty straight out of camera and also too saturated. And so I was doing a lot of tweaking in Lightroom. Like, I was pretty much touching all of the adjustment sliders in order to get it to where I want it to be. So I basically adjusted down the contrast, adjusted down the vibrancy, and then I had to bump up exposure, and I had to bump up the shadows and bump up the white. So there's a lot happening there. And do I love the way they turned out even after the adjustments? I think they're okay. I think just even the tone of the film, I'm not quite sure what to think of it. I think it's interesting. I think if you have to tweak film that much, then maybe that's not the film stock for you. And so I know when we get our scans back from the lab, I know everyone does a little bit of tweaking. Like when I get my Portra 400s and Kodak Golds back from the lab, I'm usually tweaking a little bit, and I'm usually touching the whites and increasing that, and then maybe bumping up the exposure by one stop or so. But otherwise, those are the only two adjustments I make. But for this one, I had to make a lot. So maybe this film stock isn't for me. And also, I shot it in very different light this time. It was golden hours, really bright, super sunny. So maybe this isn't the right light for it either. So maybe somewhere in between cloudy and golden hour, because the photos were just super yellow, super warm. So maybe somewhere in between. Would I try this film stock again? I think I would. I don't know. I think it's just fun playing around with film. I would probably try it in different light I think I would shoot it in 100 again, because I felt like it was still a little bit underexposed and I did have to tweak it a little bit. But yeah, I can see this being a fun film stock, but I don't think I would use this on a regular basis. So while this film stock isn't for me, I know that the film community really appreciates any kind of new development in this film industry, because for the longest time it was just kind of like dead, and it was just kind of like we had to buy old cameras and, just kind of like hoarding film stock because, they're just like gradually disappearing one after the other. And so for something new to come out, I absolutely really appreciate it. And I highly, highly want to support Harman as they try to develop new film stocks, color film stocks, or whatever it is. Not my daily driver film stock, but maybe for special occasions, it's something I'll use after I figure out really what is the best situation for this particular film stock. I don't know. What do you think? Let's talk in the comments.